on the wall, right? And it's not the one I remembered it being. So we're not going to reveal what that is. If you want to look, you can go up there after the service. Good afternoon. Inside Out, Stories of Rebellion. Peace, love, freedom. Prayer to action. Spiritual defiance. Twitter. All right. So the Bible. She's going to open with the Bible. It's okay. The Bible, a story of rebellion, right? Cover to cover. The garden, the forbidden fruit, right? The guy who builds an ark even though he's never seen a day of rain in his life, okay? Then fast forward to the Christian scriptures, Jesus. His first miracle, turning water to wine, rebellion. Paul of Tarsus. No, this isn't just for the Jews, it's also for the Gentiles. And then John, Revelation. Rebellion, all right? And so Jesus, if we look at his words, master teacher, if we look at his words, he is not concerned in his teaching with what you believe. Paul is. And so we hear a lot about, through the history of Christianity, we hear a lot about what you believe. Some of you, if you come from the Catholic tradition, you would recite every week what you believe. But Jesus talked about what to do and who to be. What to do and who to be. So unity's fourth and fifth principle, prayer. We come into alignment and create good in our life. And action. We live the truth we know. Prayer to action. So I really want to work with that concept because it is crucial and critical to us right now that we take action in the world. So Reverend Lola Wright from the Bodhi Spiritual Center in Chicago would say it this way. I would never say this, but she would say, it's time for us to get off our big fat affirmations and do something in the world, right? But we must always begin in prayer. We can't just run all willy-nilly around and save the world, right? We can't go out and make the world a better place unless we have anchored our soul and our mind, presence, knowing, consciousness, activity in that alignment with who and whose we are. So we must first know the truth in our own being. And then we must take it into the world. Live that. Unity's fourth and fifth principle. Martin Luther King was not a unity practitioner. Okay? But the way he interpreted scriptures is very much in alignment with the way we interpret scripture in unity. So he would say, or he did say this, every day is judgment day. And we say that too. We say it like this. We create our own heaven and hell, right? By the thoughts we hold in mind and how we allow those thoughts to create our beliefs and our reality. So he said, every day is judgment day. Light has come into the world. That is the movement, the knowing of the light in our own being, right? Accept our own divinity, as we heard in the song. We are truly free once we accept our own divinity. So the light coming into the world. Therefore, each one must decide whether to walk in the light of creative altruism or the darkness of self-destruction. So right there, not only is he saying light has come into the world and you have a choice to make, but he's defining that light, creative altruism. He's giving a parameter of what that is, creative altruism. And so the light being God, the presence of God, the knowing of the presence of God, creatively altruistic. Well, we know that first source, essence, divine mind, whatever you want to call it, the isness, the stuff of the universe that people have been trying to define since we first had a thought. creatively altruistic is the activity of creative altruism. Why? Because it's self-expressed. It's self-expressed. It is animating each of us, moment by moment. Creative altruism. And giving you freedom to do what you will with that experience. There is no self-interest in that. Okay, so I interrupted Dr. King. The choice we have to make is to walk in the light of creative altruism or the darkness of self-destruction. Life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? That's the tagline. That's the tagline to every day is Judgment Day. Light has come into the world. We each have a choice to make to walk in the light of creative altruism or the darkness of self-destruction. The tagline is life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? Prayer, alignment with divine truth, action. That is ours to do. So back to the wine. I mean, that's my kind of miracle, right? We're at a wedding. Weddings in first century Jerusalem would go on for a week, several days, so you had to really be stocked up on wine. I don't know what your family experience is, but my mom has 60 first cousins and I have 30 first cousins. Okay, so we have a big family. When we get together, there needs to be a lot of wine in the cellars, if you know what I mean. Okay, so they're at the wedding at Cana. All right, this is the first recorded miracle. Jesus and his brothers and mother, and the scriptures record that. His brothers and mother are at the wedding. So we can presume that this is a family wedding. We don't know that, but we can safely assume that the whole family is there because scriptures rarely make a point of saying that. The whole family is there. It's probably a family wedding. And supported by the fact that Mary is concerned that they are out of wine. This would be sort of a social faux pas, right? Just as it would be people come over and you run out of something that you're serving. It's, but there's no liquor store on the corner. There's no anything, no Berbelias or whatever, to drive, to pick it up, right? So they're out of wine, and Mary says, Jesus. And he's like, Ma, with my friends. It's not my time. And she's like, so she says to the servants, whatever he says, do it. Okay, he's already said no. Whatever he says, do it. So I'm imagining, because the next thing is he takes action. So I'm imagining that the subtext, what is not written, is that she gives him the look. Right? Right? That look that only a mother can give that compels you to action, right? There's prayer, and then there's the mom's look that will compel you to action. So, he's like, Ma, he's with his friends. She's like, whatever he says, do it. And then she turns to him and gives him the look. So then he says to the servants, bring me those 6 vessels. Okay, and these are large with 2 or 3 measures. They are actually reserved for ritual. So these wouldn't be serving vessels. They're reserved water for ritual. And he says, go fill them with water and serve them. Okay, so long story short, when they pour the water out, it is wine, and it's not just any wine. It's not your $6 bottle. It's not a box. It is the best wine, because the comments are to the host, you have saved your best wine for last. Usually you would serve that first, right? Because after a while it's not as important how good the wine is. So, rebellion. It's not time. So obviously Mary, as mothers do, knew his potential, knew who he was. If anybody sees you, it's your mom. And he's like, no. So can you relate to just that simple moment of you and somebody else, your mother, whoever, knowing who you are and what you are capable of and choosing no? I'm not going to do it. I was going to see if she was going to answer. There's a rebel who didn't turn her phone off.
That's my mother.
Right? Because she knows. That's right next to God calling, right? That's your mother. Oh, I kind of want you to answer it. I'll call her back. we can get some information. I promise not to say anything about Nian, but we can talk about you. Get your mom on the phone. Moms know, right? So, and if your relationship with your mother isn't such that she knows, there's somebody in your life that knows, that sees you. And if not, find that person. Find that person. Hopefully that's what we accomplish when we come together in spiritual community. We see one another. We see the truth of who and whose we are. So then the responsibility is on our own shoulders, what to do with that. Do we sit and talk to our friends, or do we take action? And it's, Bible scholars have sit and, examined this story because there's a lot of details, left out, and make all kinds of meanings. I mean, allegory out of it, metaphor, political, spiritual, all kinds of meaning out of this story. Because it is the first miracle. And the dude turns water to wine. He's not healing the sick. He's not overthrowing the government. He's turning water to wine. But I think there is so much just taken at face value. Simply taken at face value. Rebellion. I don't want to do it. And service. Service to the entire family, probably, wedding party, to a cultural tradition, a wedding, allowing the party and the fun to continue in a most exquisite way. So again, it's going all the way, full force, full power of who I am, who you are, and what can be done, and doing it selflessly. What are you doing for others? And we can take that in sort of a big chunk, and it can seem overwhelming. Am I saving the planet? Am I recycling? Did I eat too much meat because I'm driving the whole meat industry, and it's bad for the planet and the greenhouse gases, and or the landfills, and did I use a straw? And there's a sea turtle in the ocean that we can really overwhelm ourselves with information. But the fact that we have that information, we can breathe that in. Centering ourselves, who and whose we are. What can I do right now in this moment? Right now in this moment. And then the next moment. And the next moment. So that we don't get overwhelmed. We plan our long-range goals, our mid-range goals, and then the right now. What can I do? Who am I to do what? So we step into what we know about ourselves. We were born. Right, and when we think about, what am I doing with my life right now? We don't go back to I was born. But that's the critical moment. That is the critical moment. God expressed itself as you. That's the miracle. That's the moment. And you have a choice to make. Walk in the light of creative altruism, or walk in the darkness of self-destruction. And the tagline is, what are you doing for others? So we don't need to get caught up in what do we believe about it. Right, faith. That faith that perpetuates the next step. I was born. Whose am I? I am divine in nature. I am the expression of all of creative altruism. I am that expression. So how I interpret that, how I live it, and my life of Interspiritual Buddhist, is that me? That might be me. How I live that, that's fun as humans, to exercise our brain and to sort of interpret and ingest our belief systems and our spiritual practices to match those belief systems. But we have freedom to be who we are, to interpret as we will, to live in the world as we are designed each uniquely to live. So what I can do, you're not going to do it the same way. And what you can do, there's no way I could do that the same way, to the same effect, to the same importance. So you do you, I'll do me. But knowing that we are connected and that what I do does affect you and impact you, and what you do does impact me and does affect me, then we make that choice. Do we create the sweet wine? No, Ma, no, not now. So, this prayer to action started as a hashtag. I have to work on social media as part of my job for Unity, and I was getting overwhelmed just as a social media person of sending prayer to every natural disaster, every terrorist act, every shooting that was happening, when like police violence, police brutality was in the news a lot, having to respond in a very centered way, because I'm representing Unity, was exhausting. And part of that exhaustion was because I'm tired of praying about it. I want to move into action. What can we do about this? And so I just started offering that as an idea of, and I'm not the first to do it, I'm not the only one doing it, but this is my experience of it, of let our prayers be the activity of emergency workers, of healthcare workers. So applying prayer treatment to the situation. So it's not just feeling like I'm just, love and light and peace and we'll do better next time. But to really call it out. How is this love and light and peace going to show up in the midst of a storm or a flood or a shooting or racism? How is that going to show up? And so I started doing hashtag prayer to action. And then I started working with this idea as a class. Okay, there are other people who are wanting to, how can we get off our big fat affirmations and get into action? How can we put it to practice, these ideas? And then in last fall, in September, I went to Las Vegas with my family. My 2 girls and my mom and my grandma and all kinds of people. To celebrate my mom's 60th birthday and my daughter's 13th birthday. And we were there the last weekend in September. We were there October 1st when the shooting happened. And we were on the Strip. So that was like a shifting moment for me personally. We weren't on the end of the Strip where the shooting happened. We were on the north end. And we just happened to be going up the Stratosphere, which is the tall, and there are rides at the top, and I promised my daughter to go on the rides. I'm afraid of heights, but a promise is a promise, and it's 120 stories up, and it shoots you up even further. As we approached the building, we saw SWAT. People with masks, gas masks, Uzis around the perimeter of the building, and that was unusual for Las Vegas, but they didn't seem concerned about anything. They were just kind of standing around talking. There'd be a car passing, but there was no don't come here. Again, we're on the opposite end of the Strip. So we had no idea at this point that the shooting, it was 8 minutes into it. I think it had just ended literally at the time we got there. And so we go up the ride. They drop us off because everybody's tired, and they're like, you guys go do this thing. We leave our phones. So we've got our communication. We get up the elevator, 105 floors first, and then you go up to the right. So we're up on the observation deck, and we're looking the view of Las Vegas. You're outside, and it's windy up there, and it's cold. And the highways are shut down, and there are droves of emergency vehicles driving down the highways. And I'm hearing people, the Strip is closed. We can't get back to our hotels. The elevator is closed. We can't get down from this building, okay? And I'm looking, there's so much misinformation, but people are checking social media. There are 3 active shooters. I mean, it was we had no idea. Bomb threat, there were lots of, shooters up and down the Strip, which is not what it turned out to be, but this is the information we were getting, stranded 105, 110 floors up. And there was a building, so looking south on the Strip, the Mandalay Bay was over here. That's where the actual shooting was. And on this side, and just off the Strip, was a parking garage, a really big one. And it was surrounded by cars. So I'm thinking, all right, there's a shooter there, possibly in a couple other areas of the Strip. that's a bomb. This is what's going through my mind, because it is surrounded and they are staying there apart. So this seemed like a very big and scary event. So we went on the ride because we couldn't get down. We had tickets, and I'm trying to protect my daughter from the fullness of what I'm discovering. We go on the ride, and we find they open the elevators to let people down, and we get someone's phone to make a call to connect with our ride. And at that point, we learned that the strip is entirely closed down, and if you try to get onto the strip, you risk danger because they want you out. And so my dad lives in Las Vegas, so we went just a couple miles east of the strip, and we were able to stay there. My grandmother, however, is trapped in the hotel, and I turned to Twitter, and there's a shooting at the Flamingo, which is where we were, and that's where my grandma was. And people were locked down, we couldn't get a hold of her. She was fine, there was no shooting there. But I share this with you because we hear these things happening, it feels like constantly. And I was in proximity. I wasn't even in the midst. I wasn't in the midst of gunfire. I wasn't running for my life like those people were. I was in the midst of a lot of information and misinformation. But I'm going to tell you what I also saw as I'm looking through Twitter and I'm searching hashtag Vegas shooting, hashtag Flamingo, all of these things to get information. What I saw was constant Twitter posts of, I have 2 bedrooms and a car, I will pick you up. I can give you a ride. I have, 3 friends, we'll bring you water. Because 10,000 people staying at the Mandalay Bay were not allowed for 4 days back to the Mandalay Bay. They were not even allowed into the parking garage to get the cars that they came. So there were people displaced. But immediately, citizens like you and me went to action. This is what I can give. The blood banks, they had lines hours before they opened. And then the people who got in first would go to Starbucks and bring back coffee and food for the other people who had been standing in line for hours. Action. Doing what you can do right where you are with what you have. Now, you may not be able to, in that one activity, stop all of the shootings for the rest of eternity. You may not be able to influence gun regulation, but serving those people who are in the midst of that trauma, doing what you can when you can do it, makes all the difference and influences that bigger picture of who and who we are and what we want to see in the world and creating the world that we want to live in. So what is your vision of creative altruism? What does it mean for you to walk in the light of creative altruism? Tagline, what are you doing for others? And that's not to say, well, what about me? I need a sandwich. I need a bill paid. I need employment. I need to live in a country that is not oppressing me because of my gender or because of my race or my ethnicity or my immigration status. What about me? As we live and take steps toward the world we want to live in, we create that. And it's not just for others, it's for ourselves. We become part of that reality. We come into alignment with everyone else who is holding in consciousness that creative altruism, that world reality. And it becomes manifest in us. Truly free, peace, love, free, all of that. So as you sit and contemplate, what is mine to do? Who am I as a creatively altruistic beam of light in the world? Think back to our rebel Jesus. Master teacher. Was pretty unimportant when he lived. His ministry only lasted a couple of years. 2 years. That's it. He was insignificant until he was crucified for his rebellion. Right? And then that launched what we know today as Christianity, and then it was launched new thought, unity, interspiritual experience. doing you and what you were called to do, walking your path. So when you arrive at a wedding, what do you see in a $2 pitcher of tap water? Do you see not enough? Do you see lack? Do you see that we've run out of the good stuff? Or do you see a fine glass of rosé, the sweetest, the best?